Disclaimer and warning statement. The views, information, or opinions expressed during the Exposing Deathcare podcast are solely those of the individuals involved and do not necessarily represent those of the host or the podcast. Content warning. This podcast contains discussions of sensitive topics related to the funeral industry, including unethical practices, trauma, and misconduct. Listener discretion is advised. The stories shared in this podcast are presented anonymously to protect the privacy of the individuals involved. Thank you for listening, and we hope that by sharing these stories, we can work together to improve the funeral industry for everyone involved. Welcome to Exposing Deathcare, the podcast that pulls back the curtain on the funeral industry, revealing the truth behind its darkest practices. I'm your host, Em, and each episode we bring you real stories from funeral directors and death care workers who have experienced the best and worst of this hidden world. Once again, before we dive in, a quick disclaimer. The stories shared on this podcast are anonymous and may contain sensitive content. Listener discretion advised. Welcome back to our second recording, Em. Since my first show out of the gate, I didn't have my mic on. How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Much better. Oh, was that a kitty?
That is my kitty.
Oh, hi, kitty. All right. Well, for anonymous purposes, we'll just call them kitty. Well, we're going to jump right back into this. How did you get into the death care realm?
When I was in school, a lot of people have family that are in death care, close friends, they have those connections. I never really had any of those, but I went to funerals for my grandparents and other family friends growing up, and I just thought it was so interesting. I wanted to watch the funeral directors close the casket, like tighten the air seal on it. I just thought all of that was so fascinating. And then I got a degree in anthropology, and one of my favorite things to learn about is death cultures around the world, not just Western death culture, but across Asia, Africa, like everywhere. And then I found out about the green burial, like revolution, alkaline hydrolysis, natural organic reduction, and I just fell in love with that. So I decided to go to school because I want to be able to teach people about other green options and just kind of get rid of that taboo in death care.
I love it. Big round of applause from me. I don't know how to make those sounds, but cha 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 cha.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Well, I want to jump backwards into what you just stated. You did anthropology studies, and I want to know, what was your most interesting death culture that you studied? What was your favorite, I guess?
That's tough. The one that sticks into my head the most is, of course, I'm blanking on the name, but you'll know what I'm talking about. I believe it's an Asian country. Every year they bring their dead back out from their graves or their tombs or whatever, give them a bath, change their clothes, and like spend the day with them as if they were still alive. And I think that is so fascinating. I love that because in like Western culture, that's unimaginable. Like having people come out from their graves or their tombs or wherever, that is something we would never do. And I love that there are people in the world that do that. I think it's so fascinating.
I do too. I was Googling it, and it's called a Chinese death ritual out of Singapore. So traditionally, the body is ritually washed, sometimes with water scented with pomegranate flowers, and dressed and have their clothes changed. So very interesting there. How long have you been in your role, and like, what is your job title currently?
So currently I'm an embalmer, and I just got promoted to that because I just got my state licensure about a month and a half ago. But I
Again,
have
round of
been
applause.
Thank you, thank you. I'm not a licensed funeral director yet, but I'm working on that, getting that started.
Are you
Um
more of a back end person or a front end person, or you want to be both?
right now I'm more of a back end, but I do want to be able to say that I can do funeral directing, especially because I like to teach people about those other death options and to be able to tell them, yes, I know what I'm talking about. I'm a licensed funeral director. That gives them that other sense of security. In the death care world for about a year and a half now, with various other jobs, but just with the one I'm at, it's only been about a month and a half.
What other jobs have you had as you've progressed in your education?
So when I first started at school, I worked at a Muslim funeral home, actually. I'm not Muslim, but that was just one that was close to my house, and I absolutely loved working there. That's actually where I want to do my funeral directing apprenticeship. And then I've worked as a removal tech for two different companies. One of which was a big corporation, and then the other one was at the place I'm at now. I started as a removal tech, and then once I got licensed, I've been promoted to embalmer.
Oh, what was the most trial by fire part that you've been through so far? Which one of those job titles?
I think I'm going to be honest, the removal tech while you're still an apprentice, because I was doing both at the same time. And that became a lot because I would be in the prep room, but then there would be calls. And because I'm not under the job title of embalmer, I'm still technically a removal tech. I would have to leave. And that was just a lot going back and forth between prep room and hospitals and prep room and a house call. And it was just a lot.
So you had many hats that you have worn in
Yes.
multiple positions.
Yes.
So how do you feel the pay has been so far in your journey in death care?
It's been okay. Like I'm not left out in the cold. Like I'm surviving, but I'm not thriving, you know?
Okay.
When I worked at the Muslim funeral home, I say worked, but I volunteered. I was there every Friday. So I didn't get paid there. But I do count that as work experience. And then when I was at the big corporation, I got $17 an hour. And that came with the optional I could sign up for like a 401k or get insurance and all that. And then at the place I'm at now, when I was removal tech, it was 17. But as I've been promoted to embalmer, I now get 20 an hour. But it is a family owned company, and we're still getting our feet off the ground. So right now we don't have insurance options or anything, but they are looking to add that in the future.
And I've no no shade on your current employer, but I hear that so often, and I've also been put in that position where a family-owned firm that hired me was like, "Yeah, we're looking at policies right now, or we're looking into things." And my experience was that looking and actually doing were two different things. So
Hmm.
I hope you have a better experience with that than I have.
Yeah, I mean, we're growing pretty quickly. We're in the process of moving buildings because our demand has just been so high, so we're not in a hard spot or anything. And I really trust my employers. I know they want the best for us. They do that cliche like we're a family, but the owners are married and their children are also co-owners. Like it really is a family business, and I do think that they're working on it. We just have a lot going on right now trying to move buildings.
I can understand that too.
Yeah.
Lots of, I guess we call them hats in the air. So take it away, Em. What do you have to say today?
Okay, so my main one, let me see. So I am friends with one of my old professors that I met in mortuary school. Now that I've graduated, we hang out. I have her number and, we're close friends. And she texted me one day and said, "Hey, do you work with A?" And I said, "Yes, why?" And she didn't get back to me immediately. And then about 5 minutes later, my one of my bosses calls me and says, "Hey, do you follow A on Instagram?" And I told her no. And while I was on the phone with her, I looked her up on Instagram and it was private, so I couldn't look at her posts or anything. And I didn't request it. I didn't really know what was going on. The school contacted S because they were seeing posts that A was posting on her Instagram about stuff in the mortuary, which at first glance doesn't seem like a bad thing. Like I have a TikTok following of 500 people. It's not big or anything, but I post about stuff on Instagram and TikTok. But apparently, she was posting the uh, organs of autopsy bodies, pictures of hearts and brains and videos of that. But then we also currently at our building are in the same building as a private autopsy company. So even though we have that ethic of no pictures, no videos, it's even drilled into our brains, because on that autopsy side it's legal stuff, and we for sure can't be taking pictures and videos of identification and all that stuff. But she would go in the cooler, because there are, whispers that every mortuary is haunted. So she went in the cooler where we have people, their faces are covered, but they have bands, and sometimes their body bag has names on it. She filmed inside the cooler and went up to a John Doe that had been there for months and told her audience that John Doe was haunting our mortuary. And so everyone was asking me, if I followed her on Instagram, if I could perpetuate these claims or deny them on her behalf. But unfortunately, I couldn't. And what I heard was that they're going to talk to her and fire her. I think she has been spoken to, but she still works with us. That was a crazy little week and a half.
Oh, whoa.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't even know what to say. Like, when I first started my social media content, like way back in 2016, when I would have pictures of shrouded bodies or, wicker basket caskets, because that was my niche,
Mhm.
I had families asking me to post this stuff, or they were
Mhm.
signing releases because I was working with documentaries. This individual is still employed.
Yes.
And that kind of speaks to, is there a desperation in the industry, or does this person have connections?
I think it might. I actually don't know about her connections, but I do know that there is desperation. We are always looking for new people.
Yeah, that just blows me away. And I'm sure that there are others of us, out there in the working field that are going to be listening to this that have also seen things. There was an Instagram or TikTok person, like Mortician Swole or something, that about
Mhm.
this time last year had posted a bunch of pictures of him doing removals and like unloading the cot at the, I guess, the crematory, and talking about how the person died, whether it was true or not. Big, big no,
Yeah, that's
big
insane.
ethics violation.
Yes,
Like
I know
most of
exactly what
us,
you're talking about.
yeah, most of us that are going to demonstrate something like removing a cot or telling a story are going to use like a shrouded mannequin or a shrouded skeleton. And that's become the most ethical way to do it, because you don't want to upset other people.
Yeah, of course.
Well, good luck to A on their stellar career in funeral
Yeah.
care.
Yeah.
See how long they last. I would hope that the school would have policies in place, or that they would implement policies that say, while you're a student here, you should not, as far as the ethics, you should follow ethics for
Mhm.
regular social media. However, I know there is one particular school.
Mm.
They started out like partnering with their social media stars. The
Mm.
first one they did that with was Before the Coffin. So she started all of that, where the educators started getting involved in social media. So
Mhm.
kudos to her for being a pioneer.
Yeah, it's a whole mess. Yeah.
They
Gosh,
should
that
like
sucks.
retro something, like send her a fruit basket or
Yeah, at
flowers for
least.
her wedding or something.
Yeah.
What else do you
Um
want to get off your chest?
so when I found out about this podcast on I found out about it on Instagram. I remember seeing that you wanted like relatable stories that people might be able to relate to, whether it's ethically or they know someone that has done that. But I think one thing that no one likes to talk about, but everyone has done it, is dropping bodies. It's not pretty, and it's not something you want to be proud of, but they're literally 200, 300 pounds of actual dead weight. And you are just a person, and they fall, and it's unfortunate, and you have to like prevent it if you can, but it happens. I remember the first body I ever dropped, and it's my favorite story, and so I wanted to share it. It
Yes, please do.
was a 350-pound person, and they were on a table, and we were trying to either get someone in or out of the cooler, and it's a pretty packed cooler because this was at the big corporation. We needed that person out of the way, and so there was a ramp up to like the prep room, and one of the embalmers said, "Hey, bring them up here." And I didn't think to ask for help. I was still a newbie. I was like, I can totally do this. I could not totally do it. Ended up tipping over, There were no visible bruising or anything, so it didn't end up being a big deal. It took about 6 of us to get him back on the cot, and nothing horrible happened. I kind of was embarrassed, but I forgot about it until a few days later. One of my coworkers that helped me pick this person back up came up to me and said, "Hey, that body that you dropped, did you see their tattoo?" And I said, "No, what was it?" And they had a giant swastika on their leg. And I'm like, "That is insane. Thank you for telling me." And so we went to look at their other tattoos because they were tattooed basically head to toe. They had on their knuckles the word murder, and they had a bunch of other white supremacy tattoos all on their body. And in his personal effects, he had a white privilege card, which is like a gag thing that, people that believe in white supremacy and don't think that white privilege is a real thing, they have a little card that says white privilege as a little haha, like, get it, I'm white thing. So he
Mm.
had one of those. I feel horrible that I dropped him, but I'm like, if he was still alive and he fell over, I wouldn't be concerned. Um, I didn't ever see him again after that. I don't know what funeral home he ended up going to, or if he was cremated, or what happened to him. But
Yeah.
it's just one of those things where it's like, yeah, I dropped him and that's horrible, but it's also like,
If it was going to be anybody, it might as well have been that guy, right?
exactly. And then it's also that thing where in Deathcare you can't be racist, you can't be sexist, you can't be anything, because at the end of the day they're all people. And even though
Yeah.
he had a completely different belief system than I have, I still have to treat his body with respect because he did have a family, he did have friends. It's our responsibility to treat everyone the exact same.
Yeah. It reminds me of a story I witnessed at a crematory, and they were training a new hire. I was in the crematory getting a body ready for cremation. They had two individuals that had passed away from domestic violence and self-inflicted,
Hmm.
and they had already picked up the domestic violence and was handling that. I don't know why they picked the same funeral home, but they did. And the other one, the perpetrator, uh, they had him loaded on the cot backwards, so where the feet are actually on the handle end,
Hmm.
where you usually wanna put the head for the body weight when you put them in the thing, because this new hire had done it. They picked him up
Mm.
from the MEs, they didn't know what they were doing, they put him on backwards. The trainer person that got him out, everybody knew what this individual did, and he goes, "The reason you wanna flip the body around is because this could happen," and he pulls the one lever and the head side just goes, "Bam!"
Oh my
on the
gosh,
ground. And I was just like, stunned, stunned.
that's insane.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I mean, at least mine was accidental.
Yeah, no, this was definitely intentional. I've
That's
seen some
crazy.
stuff.
Some of
Yeah.
these people are just so bold.
Oh, let's see. Can you share a positive experience?
I that's a good question. I'm going to go with actually a person that I dealt with yesterday.
Okay.
It was a baby. Unfortunately, I think it was probably about months old when it passed. So I had the opportunity to embalm him and I sutured him back up. That was my first baby. I've picked up babies, but I'd never actually embalmed any before. And everyone came to see him. They said he looked really good, and we were just treating him like he was alive almost. We were saying how cute he was, and I gave him a little bath. Like, I would, when I had to move him back and forth, I would carry him wrapped in my arms, and it was just the sweetest little baby. And just everyone was so kind. It was just so sweet for everyone to like treat this baby like it was still alive, and they were all fawning over him, and he was just the sweetest little guy.
With just the
Um,
greatest of care.
yes, and it was so sweet.
Wh hmm. Do you have any more on the down end that you wanna share?
I don't believe so. Like I said, I've only been in the industry for about a year now. So luckily I haven't dealt, too horribly with things. You know what? Actually, I do have one now that reminds me. When I was still at the corporation, um people would come, other mortuaries, privately owned mortuaries and crematories and funeral homes would come pick up bodies from us. And I remember it made me very uncomfortable. There were some people coming to pick up a decedent who was male. We have to open the bag, make sure there's no personal effects. They could put their tag on him, the usual stuff. But one of the people that was picking him up was like, wow, this guy has an impressive package. I bet his wife was really happy. I was like,
Whoa.
what the heck are you talking about?
I have heard things like that before. Absolutely. It's been men primarily that I've witnessed or overheard commenting on both men and women's body and body parts.
Hmm.
Vile.
I know. And I was just like, even like you wouldn't say that about a living person. If you saw a person, like you wouldn't shout that out inside a Target.
You
So I
wouldn't
don't
do it
know.
like if you were in a surgical place,
Yeah,
they'd fire
exactly.
your
So I
ass.
don't I don't know why you're doing it here. Like just because they can't hear you, that's still
You don't know
like
that.
in yeah. That's still crazy.
They say hearing is the last to go.
Yeah,
That's,
they do.
do you talk to your bodies ever?
Oh, of course I do. I
Me too.
I tell him I don't know what I believe about, what happens after we die. I do believe in ghosts though. So I will explain to them, okay, I'm going to suture your mouth shut. It might hurt a little bit. And then I tell
Mhm.
him, okay, I'm going to look for your artery now. And I tell him what chemicals I'm using. And then when I put the stone oil on their face, I'm like, now we're at the spa and we're all done and you look beautiful.
One last spa day for your weary, weary bones.
Yeah. I like to put them to rest, comfortably.
Well, you brought up the ghost stuff. So, my last episode had a brief question about the ghost stuff. Do you have any stories?
I don't have any stories because the issue is my number one fear in the entire world, more than sharks, more than snakes, more than murder, is ghosts. I
Yeah.
hate them.
I
I
love this.
hate them. I am so terrified, but I believe in them. And so I am always looking over my shoulder and I'm jumpy. Like if my coworker walks in the room and if they knock and make their presence known, I'm still a foot off the ground. So I always turn the lights on and I never turn my back to an open door if I can avoid it, just because I do not want anything to sneak up behind me. Luckily, I haven't dealt with anything. I had a coworker go into like the autopsy suite and they said that they found an old man ghost in there, that I don't think he was malevolent, but I think he was just confused. But I did not ask for details because I like, don't ask, don't tell. I don't want to know.
Can you imagine you die and then your soul exits your body at the funeral home or the autopsy place and you're just stuck there? You're like, what in
I
the
know.
hell?
I know. Like, can I at
This
least be
is
at
my
my
personal
house?
hell. Yeah.
Like, I want to be in my
Send me
bed.
to Disneyland or something.
Yeah, let's go somewhere cool.
I want to go live in the haunted mansion.
Yeah, I feel like that'd be fun.
You said something about, in a hurry to turn the lights off and you don't turn your back to the door. When I first, as a baby funeral director, baby, not even a funeral director, before I was a student, I
Hmm.
remember that for whatever reason, the light switch was on the opposite wall over by the casket,
Hmm.
and it was a long room with one exit, and you would have to go over there and turn the light off and then walk through a dark ass room to leave. I remember frequently running
Oh,
through the door.
100%. And my phone flashlight would be on.
Oh, we didn't have phone flashlights back then. I'm
Oh my
speaking
gosh.
speaking to my age. Yeah, it was bad. We had pagers. Woo. All right. So we want to close out with good things. What's a good memorable story? Something that gives you great pride.
Okay, so this is actually pretty recent. So like I said, I've only been a licensed embalmer for about a month and a half now. So we had a person, he was also a bone and tissue donor. So he had autopsy cuts and bone donation cuts. And I had never embalmed a bone donor before. So
Ooh.
my embalmer in charge, who's been an embalmer for like 30, 40 years now, he's awesome. He has seen pretty much everything. he was teaching me how to do it. I was so proud of him when I was done, and everyone was telling me how good I did. His face, like, he literally just looked like he was asleep. And I've had bodies that like look good before, but just because that one was so hard for me, having to do the bone donation and the autopsy procedure and all that suturing that it required, it was just a very labor intensive body. And for him to look so good, I will probably remember that body for the rest of my life. I was so proud of that one.
I bet there are a lot of embalmers out there that are listening to this that resonate deeply with that story. Taking somebody that was sick, frail, didn't look like themselves, and giving them what I call artificial life again. The
Mm-hmm.
art and the methodology, whatever, mythology to get there. Methodology.
Methodology.
To get there, the steps you take, the skills it takes. I mean, even with troubleshooting, just you can look
Mm-hmm.
at your work at the end. It's not a permanent piece of art, but it is still a
Mm-hmm.
piece of art.
100%.
And you're giving the family that memory picture that everybody talks about, being able to see their person the way they remembered them.
Yes, and especially with my person, it was a very unexpected death. He was visiting from another state. Passing of a spouse is always difficult, but when you're on vacation, like trying to have a good time, and then suddenly you're at the ER being told that your husband has passed, my job as an embalmer is to not only obviously disinfect and preserve and restore, but the fact that I could give the spouse closure, knowing that he does look good, like last look at the husband she knew and loved, it makes me like almost want to cry.
Well, then also the tissue, the bone donation, the things like that, that's not a gentle procedure even
Not at
after
all.
death. So sometimes you'll get bodies back that are bruised or just
Yeah.
arteries are cut too short, different things like
Yeah.
that. Are they still using the wooden dowels to replace bones from harvest at this
So
point?
on him he just had his long bones in his legs removed, and they did
Gotcha.
use wooden dowels. But I just did a bone donation like 2 days ago, and she got her long bones in her legs and arms taken, and they use like PVC pipe.
I want to put a warning out there to everybody. I was going to say, back in my day, they used to use PVC pipe. When that stuff goes through the crematory, it can cause the crematory operator severe health problems. I have a friend that I went to mortuary school circa 2001 that's now permanently disabled because of
Oh my
the
gosh.
PVC pipe that was in these bodies when they were cremating them. So
Oh my
if you
gosh.
guys are out there, you should not be cremating bodies with PVC pipe in them.
And I'm glad
Just
you told me that because I had never heard that before.
I hadn't either, but it kind of makes sense.
Yeah, because it's just plastic.
Yeah. So take care of yourself and each other for sure. Finally, closing out, what advice would you give to new professionals entering the funeral industry to help them navigate these challenges and uphold ethical standards?
My biggest one is stick to your guns and stick up for what you know is right, because there are people that want to make a quick buck. They want to do the shortest, easiest route, and it's not always ethical or legal what they're doing. And if you see something that's messed up, go to your higher ups, and if it is your higher ups, go above them, like, if you can. Because at the end of the day, if you're doing what you know is right, you won't get in trouble for that. We, as the people who uphold the ethical standards, are that point of protection for the family and for the
Yeah.
decedent, because like the family does not know really what's going on behind closed doors. And if you can be that person that makes sure that their loved one is getting treated with the respect that they deserve, that is so it's so important. So definitely stick up to your guns. It can be scary. It can be so scary to have to tell higher ups that unethical things are happening. It's going to change how things are done at your funeral home. It's just, you are that point of protection, and don't let things slide if illegal or unethical things are happening.
And also when you when you tolerate it and you just push through and try to ignore it, you're doing damage to yourself. You're actually traumatizing yourself because those things aren't okay, and it's not normal to have, you know, disgusting commentary about the dead or, unethical
Mm-hmm.
practices. You're doing more harm to yourself in the long run, and people don't realize the body keeps the score.
Yeah.
So that means your ears too.
Mm-hmm.
So, well, I thank you so much, M, for being here today.
Thank you so much for
Um,
having me.
yeah, especially since we had to do a re-record because of my what is it, greenness.
Okay.
Anybody that's put up with it this far, thanks. It can only get better from here.
Yeah. Well, I got a practice round, so I think I did better this time anyway.
Absolutely. We both did, I think.
Thank you for tuning in to an episode of Exposing Deathcare, the podcast. I truly appreciate your support and the courage of those who have shared their stories with us. If you or someone you know has a story to share, we encourage you to reach out. Your anonymousness will be protected, and your story could help prevent further harm. You can leave comments, ask questions, or provide feedback on our social medias, Exposing Deathcare, or email exposingdeathcare@gmail.com.